Hey everyone, welcome to the Kimberly Guilfoyle Show right here on Rumble, where facts come first and where news is done right. And so many big breaking stories to cover, including the continued weaponization of justice, the corruption in our legal system, and the attacks on the rule of law. Revolver News founder Darren Beatty will be here to break it all down. Today, it is as clear as ever that the swamp is terrified of the MAGA movement, terrified of its threat to business as usual, and terrified that Donald Trump is as strong as ever. It's why these deep state bad actors are unleashing one corrupt scheme after another, because they know they can't do it at the ballot box. But it's already backfiring. The swamp would like nothing more than for America First patriots to be silent, surrender, and submit to the status quo. But we all know that's not going to happen. The stakes are far too high. Just look at this video put out by pro-Trump media personality Brendan Dilley that has the left in a complete meltdown. Watch.
If I was the deep state and I wanted to destroy America, I would rig the election with a puppet candidate, one that was so compromised that they would never say a word about it. I would create a false flag that allows for mail-in ballots. I would be in charge of the ballot counting machines. I would create a false flag to blame all who question the results of the election. If I was the deep state, I would prosecute anyone that went against me. I would sue and prosecute anyone that spoke up about the fraudulent election. I would use my powers to shut down all your internet businesses and bankrupt you. If I was the deep state, I would make everyone an example why you should never question a Democrat ever winning an election. I would imprison my foes. I would use my corrupt DAs and blackmail judges to destroy you. I would make sure all crimes I ever committed never happened. I would prosecute my biggest competition. I would make sure they could never run for office ever again.
And it all comes as Joe Biden's corruption remains in full view, including revelations that Hunter phoned his then vice president dad dozens of times to try and close lucrative foreign business deals. And add that to a recent report that one of Hunter's art buyers is a prominent Democratic donor named Elizabeth Naftali, who was appointed to a White House commission just last year. It's all one giant slap in the face of the American people. And I discuss all of this with one of our favorite guests, Revolver News founder, Darren Beatty.
It's a delight to be back with you, Kimberly, as always.
This is so incredible. I'm so fascinated by it. I'm telling you, I'm getting blown up with the text messages and emails and questions because everyone saw you were coming on and they're like, they want to get the truth and they know every time you deliver. So there's so much to get into, but that's why we devoted an entire hour just to you, okay? You have a big story on Revolver News about the connection between Tupac Shakur, Ray Epps, and his defamation case. If you can lay out for us what this is really all about.
Indeed. You know, it sounds like one of these sensational clickbait type things that doesn't end up delivering. But
right.
To my astonishment and probably to the astonishment of people listening, the connection is completely legitimate and deeply important as a matter of defamation law. And so just to kind of set the table a little bit with the case of Ray Epps, I think by now, probably most people listening to this have an idea of who Ray Epps is. I mean, he's a notorious figure associated with January 6th. I still maintain he's one of the two smoking guns of the so-called Fedsurrection. He is, to recap, the only person caught on camera as early as January 5th, urging people repeatedly to go into the Capitol.
Correct.
Repeatedly. It's not just a one-off thing, just some drunk who had a weird idea and that was it. No, he flew all the way across the country, ostensibly to hear Trump speak, but he skipped the speech. Instead, on January 6th, he was a veritable Where's Waldo. He was everywhere but Trump's speech, effectively, directing people to go to the Capitol. There, it's in that direction, he says. That's where our true problems are. Spread the word over and over and over. This is a truly dedicated individual. And then, of course,
remember, he kept saying, we're going in, we're going in, we're going in, the whole deal. And you have provided and put forth as documentation. This isn't, conjecture or speculation. The actual videos of him saying this.
Right. The videos speak for themselves, and it's come out in the transcripts and government transcripts and such that Ray Epps actually texted his nephew saying in relation to his involvement in the events on the January 6th, he said, I quote unquote orchestrated it. He was bragging to his nephew, which is quite something. But here's a guy who was then pre-positioned right at that initial and decisive breach point, whispering something into a guy's ear right before the barricades are pushed down. His behavior is, don't take my word for it, the video speaks for itself, and his behavior was so egregious that he was one of the first 20 people added to the FBI's most wanted list for January 6th. He was prominently featured in the New York Times' ominously titled Day of Rage feature on the so-called insurrection. But then something weird happened. A little-known website at the time called revolver.news changed the national conversation and brought attention to the possibility of federal involvement in January 6th. And very shortly after that happened, Ray Epps's name was quietly removed from the most wanted list. The New York Times, which had previously featured Epps in a very negative context as one of the people who was, an active participant and even pre-planner of the insurrection, which is contextually suggested in their presentation of him, New York Times does an about-face, and now he's the only January 6th participant about whom the New York Times writes a fully dedicated puff piece. 60 Minutes, which is, one of these legacy trash outlets at the moment, they go to the great length of doing a sympathy segment on Ray Epps. And they had some producer who's one of these no-name guys. So I just forgot who he is because he's just a no-name guy. But he led me on and saying, don't worry, we want you as part of this. We want you as part of this. Then at the last minute, they're like, sorry, you can't be on. And which is really remarkable because 60 Minutes is pre-taped. Think of how many advantages they have. The home court advantage of splicing and dicing. Yeah. They can splice and dice. They can use B-roll. And then if I say something particularly compelling, they can just edit it out. Yet, notwithstanding all of those home court advantages, they must have thought the case on Epps is so strong that they just couldn't have me on at all. So they decided to do a sympathy segment without even giving the other side, even though they take many pot shots at Revolver and me and Tucker and so forth. Adam Kinzinger, a man, I could, say a lot of things about him, but
sure.
we'll keep it polite this time.
Right.
Adam Kinzinger, he's known to cry. He's known to do other things that I won't get into. But Adam Kinzinger has never met a January 6th participant that he didn't want to see rotting in prison for less than 50 years. And yet Kinzinger bends over backwards. He's more aggressively defending Epps than Epps' own lawyers. And to cap it all off, what legal counsel has Epps maintained for this defamation tour that he's doing, starting with Fox News?
Oh, yeah.
He's retained the counsel of Michael Tater, who is an employee of notorious Democrat hatchet man David Brock. So that gets us to the situation we're in now with these defamation suits. They're saying it's defamation. They're going after Fox, saying that Tucker having me on, suggesting that Ray Epps could have been a federal asset of some sort, that constitutes defamation. Now, here's where Tupac
Truth
comes
is
in.
The defense, but yeah.
Here's where Tupac comes in. Now, Tupac Shakur, kind of legendary rap figure, killed in the 90s. I think most people know his story. One of his songs called Against All Odds. In this song, he accuses a Haitian individual of being a so-called snitch and federal informant. After Tupac died, the individual is the subject of these accusations, sued the estate of Tupac, saying this is defamation. The ruling in this case is actually very interesting, and it draws upon a rich history of precedent, saying effectively, it can't be defamation to say someone is a federal asset because, at least from the perspective of the law, it's a good thing to work for the government. You see, because when you think about the whole context of what defamation is, it's supposed to be harm your reputation. And so you think about it in the case of Epps, like what's worse, that he was an organic participant calling for people to go into the Capitol, or that he was somehow sanctioned by the federal government or as an asset in some capacity? It's not clear that it's worse for his reputation to have been sanctioned by the government, at least from the perspective of the law. And when you actually look at the case of Epps, it's really, overwhelming in the sense that there's a reason why he's the only January 6th participant all of these mainstream outlets and the January 6th committee will defend. It's not that his participation in January 6th, it's the context of speculation about his federal involvement. That's the sole reason he's enjoying such positive press from sources that would never in another context say anything good about a January 6th participant, let alone a guy like him, who I'll remind the audience, he was a guy in camo. He was a guy with a Trump hat. He was a guy saying, go into the Capitol. He was the former head of the Arizona chapter of the Oath Keepers, which is the most demonized and heavily prosecuted militia group associated with January 6th. In every other respect, he's the perfect poster boy on paper for someone that the press would demonize. And yet, instead, they're all defending him. And it's clear they're doing that because they want to undermine the very compelling thesis that there was federal involvement in January 6th. So the whole defamation argument falls apart both on precedent and when you look at the actual fact. Is like, ironically, the Fed's speculation has been the best thing that ever happened to this guy reputationally, because the other January 6th people, they're thrown in the gutter, they're thrown in the trash, they can't find jobs. This guy's getting puff pieces from the New York Times.
It's unbelievable, but it's like you said, it's like common sense in terms of when you look at it and the juxtaposition of other people that didn't even have 1/10 of the involvement. Like, he's the chapter head of the Oath Keepers. He's out on video everywhere and he's dressed like central casting. Okay,
right.
It's so ridiculous. He's in his camo. He's like, hey, I'm going to go over to Cabela. I'm going to get some camo. I'm going to get me a Trump hat. And then I'm going to be encouraging over and over again, like a cheerleader, everyone to actually go in. Oh, I'm there to see Trump speak, but yet I actually go nowhere near Trump's speech. And in fact, I'm too busy getting people to go inside the Capitol. I mean, that's what the videos purport to show.
Right.
Those videos aren't made.
Suggest
his words and his actions and his whereabouts.
The legal complaint says he was at the speech for a small amount of time and then he was too loud or something. And it's a ridiculous excuse. And then he leaves. It's like, you traveled across the country, man. You travel across the country. You've got your Trump hat on and it's too loud. So you skip the speech in order to direct people to the Capitol. Who gave you the idea to get everyone into the Capitol such that you were harping on this the evening before? Who gave you that idea, Mr. Epps? That would be great to know. But unfortunately, in the New York Times puff piece, in the 60 Minutes sympathy segment, none of these people want to know the answer to this. All they want to do is close ranks and to do everything in their power to counteract this deeply, deeply subversive but compelling thesis that there was indeed federal involvement in January 6th, just like there's been federal involvement in a lot of such instances going back decades, if not centuries, in American history. So it's a very interesting story. And the Tupac angle is just it's interesting as a matter of the law, but it kind of makes sense when you think is it really defamation to say that someone was a federal agent as opposed to an insurrectionist?
That's legal. It's legal precedent to suggest, in fact, it has the opposite effect. So with that precedent in place, good luck to Ray Epps. Now, he's also suggested in the filing that he's going to be charged. Do you think he will be? And what's going on now? If before they're protecting him, even though he was in the top 20 most wanted, then all of a sudden, magic like fairy dust, he's not, and he's protected. And these, like you said, sympathy segments with, 60 Minutes and beloved and covered up, by the mainstream media. But so explain that this whole new interesting dynamic that now he's saying he's going to be charged. What's going on here?
Right. That is interesting. It was one of the kind of more interesting aspects of the legal complaint. They claimed that the DOJ gave him notice in May, I believe, that he was about to be charged. To my knowledge, he hasn't been charged yet. And now it's like late July. So, and the fact that if that's true, which we don't even know if it's true, but if it's true that he has some channel to the DOJ that they're telegraphing him in advance, to my understanding, that's not common procedure. A lot of these January 6 defendants, especially ones as egregious as him, they get a much different kind of treatment. They get the SWAT treatment. They get people busting down the doors. And I know a lot of people, good people like Thomas Caldwell, who's just some poor guy, is in his 60s, disabled veteran, and he basically did nothing, but they tried to make him a fall guy, and they had SWAT teams, they had guns on him, guns on his wife, and just a very ugly situation, and they do this to intimidate people. And yet in the case of Epps, they say, oh, by the way, we thought you should know that you're going to get charged. Well, so far, that hasn't happened. Of course, if it does happen, will that remove any suspicion on any of the questions that I've raised in my reporting? Absolutely not. To my mind, it would only intensify those questions. I think if he is charged, my explanation would be the following. I think that even the people, in the DOJ who've been protecting him for this long understand how bad and how ridiculous it would look to not charge Epps if they ultimately want to charge Trump, because Trump didn't do anything in relation to January 6th. So if they charge Trump and there's no charge for Epps, it's just going to make the Trump charge look even more ridiculous.
I really think so, because let's look back at history, which is about to repeat itself. All of a sudden, after all these years, they come forward with this, ridiculous slap on the wrist, right, for Hunter Biden. Before they're saying they're, indicting Trump and doing this and that. And then Bill Barr's given interviews to the New York Times saying, they have a problem if they're going to pursue charges against President Trump, but yet it won't look like, equal and fair applied justice if nothing happens to Hunter Biden, even though it was just so prophylactic and so ridiculous. I feel like that's repeating itself again. That perhaps they're bringing up the Ray Epps stuff so that they can justify what they're doing with President Trump, with Jack Smith, et cetera, to try to make this somewhat palatable to the American people. It will not be, but this is at least their, pathetic attempt to, get ahead of it.
That would be my guess. But I would be equally unsurprised if there is no charge and this is just either kind of made up or just some weird kind of smoke signal, telephone game type thing that never amounts to anything.
Just to put the chatter out there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
and then he's saying it. They're not that nice to be like, oh, by the way, heads up, right? That's not what they do.
We'll have to wait and see, but they're just going to keep piling indictment after indictment until they can get rid of him. That's the strategy now. That's the regime strategy, is they can't, which is interesting because it shows that they're not even fully confident in their vote rigging capabilities at this point.
True.
Because if they're confident in their vote rigging capabilities, they wouldn't need to bury him in one ridiculous indictment after another. So this is their insurance policy to say, we're just going to indict the hell out of him until he can't even run. And frankly, this is what the DeSantis people are counting on. You've heard of a lot of campaign strategies throughout history. The DeSantis strategy in this case, which we might dub the Merrick Garland strategy, is almost unique in the sense that he's literally counting on a corrupt Justice Department in getting rid of his rival, which is surpassing him so far that he doesn't even have a chance in a normal electoral context.
Well, that makes him twins with Joe Biden. Because Joe Biden is hoping the exact same thing. So Joe Biden and Ron DeSantis have a lot in common. That's what they're counting on. That's their, quote, long game, to use lawfare, political persecution to be able to remove their primary political opponent.
Absolutely. But as we talked about with Biden, I think Biden has a lot of troubles beyond that. I think the Democrat establishment is about ready to get rid of this guy. They're ready to get rid of the old the old guy, they're going to put him in a nice retirement home. They're going to set him up well.
God help us. Maybe they're going to put him in the villages in Florida. Good God.
Right. They're going to put him in a nice retirement home. He'll be taken care of. But with each passing day, it's more and more clear that Biden is just not happening. And even the people, the guys pulling the strings, people forget we have to kind of have a begrudging respect for this. Mm-hmm. The Democrat machine is exceedingly disciplined. You remember in the primary,
really
the 2020? Yeah. You remember in the 2020 primary, it seemed like, there are a bunch of people. And then it was like in the space of 2 days, everything closed ranks. And then it was Biden.
Everyone. Yeah.
Like the same machinery that made that happen will take Biden out just as efficiently and just as swiftly. And they're going to put someone younger and more viable in there who will be, I think, a formidable candidate in 2024. So Biden, I think he's done for. So it's really DeSantis who's counting on Merrick Garland to lend a helping hand. And I don't think there's ever been a case in a primary where somebody who's like their whole strategy is based on the hope that a corrupt Department of Justice would basically eliminate the rival that they're not capable of competing with in ordinary context.
This is some globalist, the Merrick Garland strategy stuff right there. It is. It's the Merrick Garland strategy. It's really true, but we can say this, but guess what? It's about to become facts in a matter of time, matter of weeks. Who knows? I think and you've seen all the different polls, the Harvard-Harris poll showing that Trump beats Biden. Handedly, the numbers are not good. And they're letting more and more things seep out about Joe Biden. They're covering for him less, which means the setup is in. And so he's in big trouble. And Kamala Harris, the cackling hyena, is in trouble too, because it's not going to be her. So, it's coming down to, okay, who's it going to be? And that's why they were showing, Gavin Newsom so close to Biden and working with his team and trying to collaborate, together. I don't know. What do you think? You think it's good? I think they're going to tap Newsom and then who for VP, because Biden and Kamala are out.
Yep. Kamala has the incredible distinction of being even less likable than Hillary Clinton.
How is that possible? That's an accomplishment in and of itself.
Yeah, it's an amazing achievement, but she's not only less likable than Hillary, but she obviously doesn't have the benefit of a machinery like the Clinton machinery. So she's going to be out. Biden's going to be out. I think it's possible that they would do a thing where Biden runs with Newsom as a VP to basically telegraph, okay, it's not really Biden, guys. We all know. That's possible to me, but they could just take out Biden completely. I'm not sure yet. But I think it's overwhelmingly likely at this point that Newsom is the kind of the savior here who's going to swoop in and become like a viable, real, strong candidate for the Democrats. And as we discussed last time, he's a smart guy. He's a good politician. He's not going to run on crazy woke stuff. He's going to sound as reasonable as possible. He's going to run center left, and that's going to be
campaigns with him where he did just that because he was smart and listened to me.
Exactly.
But now it's just facts. I did 600 events for him. Sorry, I created this situation. But, he's not stupid. People need to understand that. And he's going to pivot and really be the shining face of, moderate, centrist, pro-business, for lower taxes. You already see him pivoting in some of these areas. And otherwise, I think they're just in trouble. I just don't know who they have actually in their bench.
Right. Well, I mean, if it were me, it would be a no-brainer. He's the guy. He kind of looks like the America that people want to aspire to, which is why he's very dangerous, because this is far from the America that actually exists. And if he doesn't give the crazy woke stuff, it's going to be very attractive to the American people who've been so beaten down that they've become, frankly, cheap dates. You don't have to give them too much for them to say, wow, this guy's really got something to say. So that is, I think, what I would be concerned with. It's, Biden is, he's done. He's old news.
And I will tell you this, having, been on the road, and obviously I was married to him for 5 years and dating before that, he's not lazy. He
Right.
will go out there. He will work hard. He will do every radio interview. He went on with Sean Hannity, who I introduced him to. So I'm just telling people, like, understand that that's not going to just be a layup. And he actually has a very good relationship, which I cultivated, with President Trump, which is quite interesting as well. But, Biden is a joke. He's an embarrassment to the Democrats. And that's why I believe they're allowing his true colors, to show through, and why they're allowing this stuff, against Biden and Hunter, when before they were so swift to cover it up and to, make sure, okay, there's nothing to see here, folks. You're not seeing that now. And you don't see any protection of Kamala Harris either.
Right. I mean, it's pretty clear. And the thing is like, we have to understand we're in a very asymmetrical position. From the standpoint of the right in America, we have maximum awareness and minimal to no accountability. And so if you see something that's about to happen to Biden, it's not because conservative media is talking about the laptop. It's because the people in charge on the Democrat side are ready to get rid of him.
I agree. I think you're right, though, about doing the VP thing. And if I were advising them, I'd be like, no way, continue forward with Kamala Harris. Make some excuse, give her some ambassadorship, give her some position or whatever, some department head, whatever it takes to just get her out of, the White House, essentially, and put someone in. And then it doesn't matter, even if whether they pull the plug before the election or, like during the campaign, or they do it right after and said he has failing health. If they feel like they need to leave him as a front runner, they'll put that other person in. I mean, they're not stupid.
Right. Yeah. So we'll just have to see which permutation, but, we're all agreed on the basics. Unless, they're really dumb, which they're probably not that dumb. They're going to do some permutation of this. And that's going to be a tough road. That's going to be tough for, even for Trump when he gets the nomination. I think Trump will get it unless the Merrick Garland strategy prevails, but it's going to be tough for Trump. I think Trump can do it. DeSantis
he's
just
not dropping
wouldn't
out,
have a
that's
chance.
for sure. So even if they convicted him, so he's not going to drop out. And by the way, nor can he at that point, because the only way then, to pardon himself or something. I mean, it's just, the whole thing is just absolutely outrageous and un-American, But I want to talk, go ahead.
Yep. Just to say more about this Merrick Garland strategy that the DeSantis campaign has either deliberately or unwittingly embraced, because it really does seem like that's the big card that's the ace up their sleeve from their point of view. And they've even seemed to telegraph this in, messages to donors. They say, like, why are you doing so poorly? What's going on? Why should we continue to have faith in you? They're like, well, wait to see what happens with these indictments. And they're literally counting on Merrick Garland to give them an in-kind campaign contribution. But the context, I wanted to get to the Khan interview. So if we wanted to say something in between.
No, we're going to talk about that too. I just have a quick question because I got to get the most. Mama's got to get the most for her money here, right? Theoretically speaking, when I've got you here, I mean, good luck trying to leave. Okay. So we're also expecting a little bit of testimony, as we talked about, from Devin Archer. And I think this is very interesting. And hopefully, by the end of the month, who's going to expose Joe Biden for lying about being involved in Hunter's dealings. Do you think, honestly, much will come from any of this, or are these hearings too much theater with not enough tangible potential results?
I'll be completely honest. I know a lot of people are really following this. I haven't really been interested enough to follow these details, just because the context that we talked about, to me, is the most relevant thing. There's one corruption here, one corruption there. We know they're corrupt. We know it's a low-level type corruption. It's not a sophisticated corruption like the Clintons set up, like the Bushes set up. It's a low-level Biden tier corruption. And, with bribery and this just really kind of almost third world stuff out of, but you'd expect to see in South Boston, maybe the Whitey, Bulger
Whitey
types.
Bulger,
that's exactly what you see with Biden. And so as to the details of it, I mean, if people are interested, by all means, look at it. But the context here is that it all hinges on whether and when the Democrat machine wants to get rid of him. That's the only thing that matters in terms of this. And beyond that, we all know he's corrupt. So, the details are just details from that perspective.
No, I think you're right, because people already know he's been getting away with everything forever. It just matters when the machine is deciding to take him out. And let's tie this all in to your recent interview with former Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan. What are the parallels that we should actually be paying attention to?
Absolutely. And I understand, it's not the typical thing that we would cover. And probably a lot of people listening are just like, why should we care about what's going on in Pakistan? We have enough corruption going on in America right now, of all countries. Why are we going to even
This is like a corruption buffet. Okay? That's what we're
Indeed. So why even bother with Pakistan? Well, there are a lot of interesting reasons for this. So Imran Khan, like Trump, was actually an international celebrity in the 80s. He was making headlines. He had a kind of a jet-setting playboy lifestyle. He left the glamour of his life in the 80s, like Trump, many ways, to pursue politics, because he saw that his country wasn't living up to its full potential.
Yeah.
Like Trump, he ran against and ultimately defeated two entrenched and corrupt political family dynasties. In the case of Trump, it was obviously the Bushes and Clintons. In the case of Imran Khan, it was Bhutto and Sharif families. So there was that kind of parallel too. And he's basically running against now the corrupt deep state of Pakistan, which is the military, and the ISI, which is their intelligence service that's deeply connected to the CIA, going all the way back to the Afghan-Soviet war, when we were supporting basically the Mujahideen types. The cooperation goes all the way back there. So there are a lot of really interesting parallels. And like Trump, he was undermined by the deep state. They ultimately took him out of power. And now he's running again. He wants to get office again. And the government is doing everything it can to stop him. Trump's a little bit behind him in terms of indictments. This guy's facing over 100 indictments. He's currently in house arrest. He could be arrested any time and hauled off into prison any time. All of the senior people in his party are getting slammed with phony indictments and just disappearing. It's kind of like everyone in Trump's orbit has legal problems that they have to deal with. It's the same strategy, but the similarities get even more acute when you look at the individuals involved. Now, I had the honor to speak with him, and I think he was a little bit reluctant to kind of accuse of the American role, as he has in other contexts, but I was willing to play bad cop, because there is indeed an American role in what's happened to him. I should say that he had a very good relationship with Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. When Biden came into office, everything changed. Now, why is that? Well, Biden elevated a certain individual to a key post in the State Department. This woman's name is Victoria Nuland. She's someone that Trump has called out by name, is in one of his many exquisite policy statements. Trump is well aware of this woman. She is a regime change dominatrix, you could say. She's been involved in regime change for a long time. Experts agree, and Trump exposed this as well. She was involved in the Euromaidan color revolution in Ukraine in 2013, I believe. And she was involved in other things. For instance, Imran Khan was well known as a critic of the war on terror, the Iraq war, as was Trump. And, you see what happens to both of them, that you can't, once you criticize the war machine, you've got very powerful enemies, and that happens on both sides. And so Khan was criticizing the war on terror. He specifically directed criticism to Obama's policy of drone strikes in Pakistan, which were creating a lot of enemies and being very ineffective. The woman in charge of defending Obama's drone strike policy in the State Department was Victoria Nuland. So there's a history that goes back a long, long way. Nuland's husband is a guy called Robert Kagan, who is one of the original intellectual architects of the Iraq War. Interesting. And of course, every organization you can think of, remember back in 2016, every national security hack every corrupt national security moron, because they use the term national security just to cover up the fact that they're idiots and they've driven the country into the ground and just expended so much blood and treasure over nothing. It's really shameful. They've been involved in all the kind of national security organizations, operations trying to stop Trump. And this woman we discuss in this interview is overwhelmingly the suspect for who was the driving force behind this color revolution in Pakistan, because he had great relationship with Trump. When Biden came in, there was a coded diplomatic cipher sent to his ambassador in DC by basically a messenger boy for Newland saying, you get rid of Prime Minister Imran Khan in a no confidence vote, or there will be consequences for Pakistan. And literally the next day, a no confidence vote was proposed and it was ultimately successful. And that's how he was ousted from power. Now, there's so many amazing things about this. One of them is just the hypocrisy of the Biden regime. How many times have we heard the Biden regime falsely say, oh, Trump won because of Russian meddling? Oh, there's Russian meddling. We haven't seen a whole lot of evidence for that, and nothing, compelling whatsoever. But they're constantly using the specter of foreign meddling in our elections in order to arrogate more power to themselves to dispossess their political enemies domestically. And yet here we have an example of the most egregious and counterproductive and offensive form of election meddling, to the point that they're literally issuing ultimatums to a democratically elected and beloved leader in Pakistan saying, if you don't get rid of this guy, there's going to be consequences. If that isn't the most sloppy case of and just overt case of election meddling, I don't know what is. So it's another case of hypocrisy on top of a very unfortunate and unnecessary example of damaging relations with a country that we should be friendly with, and a leader who was very favorably disposed to the United States under Trump and who got along with Trump very well.
Yeah, a very critical ally and working relationship should be fostered, especially in that geopolitical region. It's really interesting because the more you just pull the little threads, you see the whole picture here of exactly what's going on. It's fascinating what you've had to say about Victoria Nuland as well and her husband. What's interesting, because when we see all the election meddling and interference and the active lawfare and political persecution of the 45th president, it seems like the biggest culprits of all this election meddling are always the ones accusing everyone else of doing it, like you've mentioned. What sort of indictment is that of this, so-called, these intel experts and everyone going and doing all this?
Well, it shows that the term national security itself has become a complete joke, because it's only useful as a pretext for the people in charge of the nation to protect their own security, the security of their bank accounts, the security of their scams, and the security of basically their criminality and corruption. That's what national security means effectively. And you've seen the term, which should have a legitimate meaning because we are a real country and we do have real and imperative national security interests. But they've abused the term to the point that it has no meaning, or it's even worse, it has a negative meaning. Because whenever you see these people invoke the term national security, they're simply trying to remove yet another big chunk of constitutional liberties away from the American people. And they're just conspiring yet again against the American people. Talk about election interference. This was an egregious case from Biden to Pakistan, but let's look at domestically. Mm-hmm. As Trump pointed out many times, what we saw in the Twitter files, that's election interference. Sure. The government pressing social media companies not to cover a story like the Hunter Biden story, that's election interference. Censorship is election interference. All the things you see is profound examples of election interference. You don't even need to go to the vote counting level, which is the most controversial aspect of the voting. You don't need to go to the voting machines, just go to the censorship. And you see profound levels of election interference that really distorts the proper functioning of the democratic process. So You're absolutely right. The people who talk about the rules-based order, the people who talk about the rule of law, the hacks, the scumbags who talk about national security have no interest in national security and never done anything to protect the American people. It's all a scam. All they're doing is scamming you. And this is why, we see a bunch of stuff going on. We've talked about geopolitics with Pakistan. We hear a lot of talk about Russia. We hear a lot of talk about China. But at the end of the day, it's really what Trump said, and he said it so well, and it's something that had to be said. And that is this, that the true enemies of the American people, the true problem holding us back from success in America, where we should be, the greatness that we really should achieve, it's not any foreign adversary. It's not China. It's not Russia. It's not Iran. The true enemies of the American people are the corrupt, illegitimate hacks that run America and are running America into the ground. That's the bottleneck, because these are the people that capitulate to our foreign enemies. These are the people who make these shitty deals with our foreign enemies. These are the people. This is the bottleneck. Once you get rid of that and have proper leadership, not only at the presidential level, but across the bureaucracies, then these other problems just disappear, because we have competent and strong leadership. So that, I think, is probably the most important thing that Trump said, and he said a lot of important things, is the real thing we're up against is not any foreign adversary. The real thing we're up against is the criminals, the illegitimate filth that run America and are running America into the ground.
It's really true. It's just such a sobering thought, and the more, Trump is attacked, quite frankly, you look at the metrics and you see that he's getting stronger, meaning he's up in the polls, he's up in Iowa, he's up in New Hampshire, he's up in the general. You see DeSantis slipping, and Vivek, Ramaswamy getting into second place, which is why I think, no coincidence, Fox News is now starting to turn their back and attack Vivek. So, because they all want.
They are. This is news to me. I haven't seen this.
Yes.
They're attacking him.
So now it's no longer, giving the attention and the nice friendliness, whatever. It's like gloves are off. And it's weird because you've seen it now. It's like a whole shift where now that he's actually, resonated and has moved into second spot in some places, they're like, oh, wait a second. We better stop this little playing cozy with this guy. Trump, they keep messing with him. He just gets stronger because everyone's pissed off. As it relates to President Trump, what do you think? Even if what you say is going to upset me, I love you too much for me to ever be upset with you. But do you think, as people ask me, and a smart person asks a question of, of an expert. So I'm asking you, do you think he can carry kind of this momentum, through this primary and the general election, even as this whole weaponized justice system is truly out to destroy? What does your gut and your honesty and your instincts tell you?
Well, I think if anyone can do it, it's him. And also, if it's not just that he's the most likely guy to be able to do it, which I think he is, but there's another dimension here too, is that for someone else, let's suppose in theory that someone else who was more establishment friendly had a better chance than him, which I don't think is the case, certainly not DeSantis.
Certainly not now,
but let's just hypothetically say, let's say an establishment person had a better chance. So what? What are you going to get from another Jeb Bush in the White House? What's the point anyway? So, it's not only that Trump is the most likely to, fight these challenges, it's that he's the person, if he gets in, is most likely to actually take on these corrupt interests that we've been talking about that are holding the country back. What's the point of having another establishment guy in the White House? What's the point of having another Jeb Bush in the White House? What do we get out of it? Nothing. So
he's the Victoria Nulands?
Exactly. So he's the guy. I think he has the best chance. But I'll say, even if I didn't think he had the best chance, I would still be for him, because I think he's the person that, if he wins, has the best chances, is most likely to actually fight the fights that we need to fight to save the country.
I totally agree, because otherwise, what is the point?
Right.
Another quick question I have for you is about the debates. A lot of discussion about the debates. People have varying opinions about whether or not Trump should do the debates. What do you think? Would he have much more to gain? What are your thoughts? Or is it more to lose by elevating others that the former president, that 45 takes the stage with them, with the likes of people like Chris Christie?
Yeah, I think he should skip. There was that event in Iowa, and I'm just thinking, thank God Trump didn't go to this, because he's just diminishing himself by being on the stage with people like Nikki Haley, like Tim Scott. I mean, no offense. Well, I mean, kind of offense these people, but they're just it's just diminishing himself. He doesn't need them.
Well, that's
he doesn't need it. He's got his own lane. I do think, though, if he's a master of anything, he understands the show. He understands the spectacle. And so I don't think he would just sit out the debate and that's it. He would put on an even bigger and better show that people would want to watch instead of the debate. Yeah. And that's what I think we should do.
There was some talk about that on Twitter, like go on and do something with Tucker, counter program against the debates. I mean, he's very good at doing that. He's done that multiple times. I've been present, I think, almost at every single debate that he's done, in the past, and it's a sight to see. I mean, it's unbelievable. Yes. He has people like silent screaming and sucking their thumb in the corner, falling off the stage, essentially. Right. But I want to talk to you about this too. So do you think that we're ever going to get any, because people are fascinated and this is an important story, are we ever going to get any answers on the January 6th pipe bomb? It's just bizarre how we never got any real transparency or even much coverage of it from the establishment media when it's such a big story.
Well, I said Ray Epps is one of the smoking guns of the Fedsurrection. The pipe bomb is the other one. And these are both cases, I have to say, had it not been for our coverage, nobody would know about any of this. And the amazing thing is, for the pipe bombs, we're getting so close. And, the last time we talked about Stephen D'Antuono, who was the face of the investigation, running the investigation now in retirement, who talked to the folks at the Judiciary Committee and basically said, this investigation doesn't add up. Like, there are so many bombshells. One of them was, we did geofencing to try to identify the pipe bomber, but the telecom company came back and said, for this specific request, the data is corrupted. There's so many things that don't add up.
What a cover up.
From the admission of the guy who was in charge. And now we have video of the discovery of the bomb at the DNC, and we're getting very close. Like, if we can identify the person who just quote unquote randomly discovered this DNC bomb, we're getting very close. And I'm working on this pretty aggressively. It's premature to really say anything beyond that. But let me tell you, they sense how close we are, and there's profound pushback at every level. And people can just imagine how high this cover-up goes. Like, at what level do you have to be to have the power to corrupt telecom data such that they couldn't give it to the FBI when the FBI requests it? This is a very high level of cover-up. The pipe bomb thing is a very high level, very sensitive cover-up. And I think a lot of powerful people are doing everything they can to prevent discussion about this and to prevent discussion about Epps. And I'm sorry to say that Epps has his legal counsel. They have successfully used the Dominion precedent to intimidate a lot of people away from talking about it. They can't intimidate you, Kimberly, but they've intimidated lesser individuals, weaker individuals who, and it's really sad to see, but they cleverly saw, look, the weakness displayed in the Fox Dominion lawsuit, which I personally think is ridiculous. They settled for close to $1 billion. It's just saying, hurt me more. And there's a reason that Epps and his counsel, even though Tucker Carlson and me, Darren Beatty, were named extensively throughout the legal complaint, we are not technically defendants, at least yet. The lawsuit is against Fox News because I think they correctly think that Fox is going to be willing to settle. Right. Because in settling, Fox, it's not just that Fox is weak, but by settling, Fox can reinforce their position that Tucker Carlson was a liability. They can settle and they can say,
That's
oh, look,
about.
see, it's just another headache that Tucker caused us.
Which is
See,
what
this
they
is why we
did
had to
with
get rid
Roger
of him.
Ailes as well. It's the same playbook over and over again. They settle so that it makes the person look bad, and it's pathetic. But let's see what happens with this. But also, so you've been able to break all this big news, do all of these stories, but it comes at a cost. Like, you've got to be able to have the funds to be able to do this. Give a plug for your incredible website, and you have a subscription service, all of the above. Do it now, my friend.
Absolutely. I'll just say, look, I'm very confident, pound for pound, revolver.news is the most effective vehicle, the most effective weapon against the corrupt filth that are running our country into the ground. It's amazing what we've been able to accomplish on a pretty meager budget and with attacks nonstop. I mentioned Soros has a nonstop woman who's going after all of our advertisers.
Oh, yeah,
it's been a headache,
matters.
whatever. That's part of the deal. People, if you want to support Revolver News, if you want to support our work, if you want to help us finally get to the bottom of these investigations that we're so close on, go to revolver.news, subscribe to our newsletter, donate, go ad-free, or simply share our stories with people who might be interested. Anything helps. We're all part of the same team. We're all fighting the same fight. We're part of the same family. So whatever you can do to help, go to revolver.news and do it. Join the fight.
Absolutely. And I'm going to tell you something. Look at the results you've been able to provide with facts and evidence and truth. You're so direct over target. That's why they're coming after you. I tweet your stuff out and put it out on my social media because I think it's so important for people to be able to get the truth, and we have to be unafraid. And the American public deserves the right to know. We deserve to take back our country and understand exactly what kind of nefarious elements are at work here and who's working together, conspiring with one another to create these, issues. And whether it's not even United States or whether we see what's happening in Pakistan, pay attention is what I tried to tell people. That's why they've got to go to Revolver News to get the facts and get the information. You've done more to uncover what's going on here and the corruption and been right about it. Look at your record. Then everyone waited forever and ever and ever for, Durham and this one and that. And I mean, right. It's just been such a big disappointment, but you have gotten to the bottom of it and to the facts.
It's funny, like, in a way, like, I like kind of being the only one doing it because, okay, you're the warrior, you're getting credit. But on another hand, I'm thinking about it and say, why the hell am I the guy doing this? Like, I don't have the resources. Why isn't the RNC doing this? Why isn't the RNC putting up a huge reward for whistleblowers? Why isn't the RNC putting up a ton of money to find out who the pipe bomber is? Because this isn't just, far be it from them to do anything just because it's good for the country. This supports their own selfish interest because the false narratives on these things are being used to attack them. And yet they have no interest in doing it. It's just shameful, the cowardice and the lack of imagination displayed, and just the total incapacity of so many of these Republican organizations to effectively weaponize capital. And yet every day, everyone who's remotely on the right is receiving 1,000 emails asking for their donations, and it just flushes down the toilet. They're not doing anything effective with it. So it's really a shame. And I think, like, why the hell am I doing this? Like, RNC has hundreds of millions of dollars. What could I do with $100 million? They're probably, at that point, I'd probably get a drone strike. They'd probably drone me if I had $100 million, the damage that I could do with that to the system. But, it really is, it should make us think, there's not a money problem. There's a problem in terms of effectively translating money into high leverage projects that actually make a difference. And it's a combination of cowardice, it's a combination of stupidity, and it's a combination of corruption, because a lot of people would rather just pocket the money and do something safe than actually move the needle in terms of the high stakes game. Yeah. It's much easier. Just pocket the money, buy a big house, buy a yacht, whatever, and but then you're not controlling the country, because the other side is willing to play the high stakes game of who controls everything. people on the right, they're playing for scraps of who can, buy another house with their consulting fees, and that's fine, but that's not going to win the big
No, it's
game.
not.
So we need more people. We need more people who are willing to play the high stakes game, the game that matters, the game that, holds the destiny of the 21st century in the balance. And so I hope more people will get involved in that. I appreciate you and your courage, Kimberly, for being a part of that and for playing the high stakes game.
Thank you.
But we just need more people. We need more courage and we need more intelligence. You have people who are very courageous but are not very intelligent.
Exactly.
And you have intelligent people who aren't courageous. And unfortunately, on the Republican side, you have a lot of people who are dumb and cowards. So we need smart and brave.
I agree. Smart and brave. Well, I applaud and admire your courage and your intelligence, and you're always an exceptional guest and fearless with incredible information. I respect a lot what you do. I know how hard you work every single day, and you are doing it just in record time, what you've been able to accomplish and get to the bottom of. So I just really hope people support you. Revolver.news, and go there, subscribe, make donations, etc. And more importantly, go and get your information there. Feed your mind so you understand exactly what's going on in this country, and don't let people make a fool of you by listening to the false narrative that they force down your throat every single day. Darren Beatty, we look forward to having you on again very soon. Thank you so much, and congrats on all the breaking news stories that you've been able to put forward.
Thank you so much, Kimberly.
All right, take care, my friend. And we have much more to come, so be sure to please just go right down there and like and subscribe so you never miss these important major episodes. And it's all of you who make the show possible, along with our amazing sponsors, like the great folks over at Goldco. Gold and silver can protect your retirement savings from inflation and dollar devaluation. I mean, look, we all see the economic warning signs. We see banks collapsing. We see reckless spending. And I want you to be ready, because I'm ready. With gold, you can take action to secure and stabilize your portfolio. Roll over your 401k or your IRA into precious metals and safeguard your savings, and you can do it all tax and penalty free. From precious metals, IRAs to direct purchases of gold and silver, Goldco has helped thousands of Americans just like you place over $2 billion in gold and silver. And here's the good part. When you open up a qualifying gold IRA today, you get up to $10,000 in free silver. When's the last time you got anything free like that, okay? So go to kimsmetals.com to learn more. That's kimsmetals.com. And don't forget about our friends over at Patriot Mobile, because with Patriot Mobile, you put America first with every call that you make, all while getting the same nationwide excellent coverage as major carriers. And not only does Patriot Mobile provide you dependable wireless service at an affordable price, they also share your values. This is so important. And they actually support you. So Patriot Mobile puts their dollars into action, donating a portion of every dollar to support groups that fight for the First Amendment, the sanctity of life, and protecting our brave police and first responders. Patriot Mobile, mobilizing freedom and supporting you. For free activation, go to patriotmobile.com/KG. Again, for free activation, that's patriotmobile.com/KG. And my closing remarks, as out of control prosecutors go all in to take down Donald Trump, now is not the time to be discouraged. It's time to stay in the fight and remain as committed as ever to saving the country and restoring American prosperity. Restoring prosperity at the ballot box and in our daily lives. And the MAGA movement, we are committed to saving our justice system, our border, and our American dream. And it starts with re-electing Donald Trump in 2024. So block out the noise, reject the naysayers, and stand firm in your principles that a better day for America is one day closer. And until that day, and for every day in between, remember that you have a home right here on Rumble, on this show, where we reject the false narrative and we always seek the truth. Please be sure to like and subscribe to my channel at Kimberly Guilfoyle, turn on notifications, download the Rumble app, and tell all of your friends so they know exactly where to find us. And also be sure to follow me across all platforms: Twitter, Truth Social, Facebook,